Hey, this is Kristen from Drive Mode, and I am here with Rebecca Lindland, a friend and someone I admire greatly. She is wise and has a lot of experience in the automotive industry. How are you, Rebecca?
I'm great. Thanks, Kristen. I'm so excited to be on. I admire you as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mutual Admiration Club.
Yeah.
Rebecca is the founder of RebeccaDrives.com, and she writes very succinct and highly knowledgeable reviews. And as well as other things, she is often a guest on news programs all over the country because of what she knows. And she is going to share some of that with us today. And what we want to talk about, Rebecca, is something you and I were kind of discussing over email, and that is right now in this time of financial uncertainty, people are worried about how they're going to pay for their cars and what they should do. And I wanted to get some advice from you on that. What kind of insight do you have into that?
Yeah. So thank you so much, first of all, for having me on. It's really fun to do these kinds of pieces because I'm always really passionate, not only about cars, which I've known every car on the road since I was born, and I don't even know why, nor does my mother. But also, I'm always concerned about the consumer. I'm concerned about them from a financial standpoint. So, a little bit more background on me. I actually have a degree in accounting and business administration, and I worked for Mercedes-Benz Credit Corporation, which was one of my first jobs. I also worked for the FDIC, the banking regulators, and closed a lot of banks back in my misspent youth. And so I look a lot of times at how people are spending their money at, times like this where there's a lot of job uncertainty. There's an incredible amount of unemployment going on. Understanding what you can do to both find relief for those financial obligations that you have, and also to protect your credit as well. We don't really know the impact that the pandemic is going to have on credit rating agencies and how they manage people's credit. So one of the things that one of the many jobs that I do in as part of both a freelancer and having my own consultancy is I'm putting together a number of articles for JD Power. And they have actually put together a very helpful website on coronavirus payment plan relief programs. And so some of them, thinking about the different manufacturers without going into too much of the weeds, there's a couple of things that I've noticed. Most manufacturers are either giving 90 or 3 month to 6 month deferment plans for existing customers, people that have financed their vehicle through their own finance company. So for instance, Toyota Motor Credit will provide you with relief if you finance through Toyota Motor Credit. The other thing is
That's a
if you
relief for a
which
lot of
is
people, I'm
really
sure.
great. It is. And I will say, if you can continue making your payments, make those payments because interest is continuing to accrue even while you're deferring. So you're still, if you are financially able to make those payments, make them. At the same time, if you're really feeling the pinch, you've lost your job or you've lost commissions, a lot of events have been canceled. If you have been financially impacted by the pandemic, then take the relief if you need it, if it's going to help you sleep better. On a lease, from a leasing standpoint, if your lease is up in the next 3 to 6 months, a lot of manufacturers are extending that lease as well, which
That's
is
good to know.
it's absolutely fantastic because the last thing that you want to do is have to get into a new and potentially more expensive lease at this time. But it's also a great time to buy or lease. So again, if you can, now is a great time to consider either getting into a new lease or or buying a new car. So you really have to evaluate what's best for your own financial picture. But I would definitely encourage your listeners to reach out to their finance company and see what their options are.
How are they able to manage this, Rebecca? Because those companies, the OEMs and the banks are hurting as well. So what's the trade-off for that? How are they making that align with their business models?
Well, a lot of the trade-off, first of all, they're being supported by a lot of what the federal government is doing with the $2 trillion relief package. So there is that in play. A lot of these finance companies are backed by banks. And again, having worked for the FDIC, I can tell you that the FDIC and a bank would always rather help a customer, help somebody through a difficult time than starting repossession. That's the last thing that people want to do right now is start repossession on a mortgage, on a car payment, on anything, any kind of financial debt. It's the last resort. What you really want to do is restructure the loan to get that person through times like this. So
Now, that's not
that's
the
what the
perception
time.
of banks, right? Like people have the perception that they're going to get repossessed immediately. And
Well, you have to be responsible, right? I mean, we saw in the banking crisis in 2008 where there was a lot of not only irresponsible lending, but irresponsible borrowing as well. You don't want to do balloon payments. You don't want to say, oh, I'm going to pay $100 for 12 months. And then all of a sudden your payment changes after 12 months and is twice what it would have been. So you want to be able to balance that out. And again, when I talk about now is a good time to buy. It is if you are financially stable. It's
right.
not a good time to buy. If you're not, don't do that to yourself. There's
Let's
enough
talk some
pain
Dave
out there.
Ramsey here. Like, let's be responsible for their money, even though the deals are great. My husband always says, it's not really a sale if you didn't need it.
Oh, that's why I don't have one of those husband people.
Darn it.
But no, I mean, it's absolutely right. Now is not the time for financial risk. On the flip side of that, again, if you are financially solvent, there's a great opportunity for investments.
Now, I saw that JD Power had put out a report maybe just a few days ago that there's 1.8 million cars that are going to be exiting their leases between now and July. So that's a lot of leases that'll be kind of in the air depending on when the quarantine is ended.
It is, and that is why the manufacturers, through their for the most part, through their privately held banks or funding sources, if you will, they are extending those leases. So I think it's one of the best things that you can take advantage of is to say, look, I've got my lease ending, and some leases are ending this week, some are ending today. So you've got to be proactive about calling. That's the other thing too, is that nobody's going to call you and say, do you want to defer your payment? That phone call
Right.
is
Good
not going to
point.
happen. It is your responsibility to contact your bank, to contact your lender. Even if you're financing through somebody else, even if you didn't use one of their captive finance companies, if you go through AAA, for instance, or your credit union, whomever you have financed through, you need to be proactive about calling and saying, this is my situation. And again, my experience has been that on that back end of that phone call is somebody who is they're better off restructuring with you than forcing into repossession. Now, that also means that you have not only been proactive, but you've been proactive early. So it's much harder. I remember again at Mercedes-Benz, somebody calling and saying, hey, I haven't made a payment in 6 months. Can you help me out? Well, have you called?
By that
Have you,
point,
right? I mean, that's the thing is that now is not the time to bury your head in the sand about financial obligations.
that's smart. One last question for you, Rebecca, and that is if you have been in the market for a car, are there any special considerations that maybe they should turn their head? What do you think about what do
There
you think?
are, I mean, there's 0% financing out. I know Mazda has a 0.9% financing. There's a lot of fantastic deals out there right now that are available. And of course, showroom traffic, you can't necessarily go into a showroom in most states, but you can call your local dealer, or email them. They're still online and say, hey, you know what? I'm interested. Find a vehicle at their lot that's already there. Don't try and order. Now's not the time to order a vehicle. All the production plants are closed. So pick something from the lot, and say, you know what, I really like this vehicle. What kind of deals are you giving on it? Don't expect something for free. You're not going to get, it's going to be a good deal, but you still have to expect some kind of reasonable price on it. But now is definitely the time to buy.
I was working on an article yesterday for an auction house and talking about, some of the best practices for dealerships. And that's what they recommend. They are doing delivery of test drives. They are
Yeah.
ensuring the sanitation, just the way the fleet companies are for press vehicles. And they're figuring out ways to make it so that you can see the vehicle at all angles with pictures and video, and really having to up their digital game as well as adapting to the current environment.
Right. Well, and keep in mind too, we're under for many places you're under a stay-at-home order. But if you go from your house to your car and drive to the dealership, don't interact with anybody. But you can still go to the dealership and walk around and look at the cars. Wear a face mask, take all the appropriate measures, but you can still go and look. You can't, as you say, a lot of people are saying, we'll bring the car to you for a test drive, so you can still test it. They're making modifications. And I would actually argue that in some ways, some of these modifications may become more long-term services that the dealerships offer. So many industries are really undergoing significant change, and the automotive industry and the dealership network are not going to be saved from that.
It's going to be interesting to see how it evolves after this.
Yes, it will.
Well, thank you so much. Always an interesting conversation with you, Rebecca, and I appreciate your time today. Go check her out at RebeccaDrives.com, and don't forget to subscribe to DriveModeShow.com.
Thank you.
Thank you.